Shalom. Shalom, Mishpaka. Shalom. Shalom to the whole Bayif of YAHUAH'S worldwide, wherever your feet touch the soil. To the older Ak, Yehuda. To the younger Ak, Ephraim. To the stranger, the Ger, Goyim, Gentile, who having come out of paganism and having thrown down their idols and having accepted Yahusha HaMashiach, the stone laid in Zion, whom the whole Bayif of YAHUAH'S is laid upon, both Yehuda and Ephraim, and the stranger, whereby through him all who are laid on this foundation become one YAHUAH in him. To the stranger who has come out from amongst the pagans and the swine and have accepted Yahusha HaMashiach, whereby now being engrafted into the Bayif of YAHUAH, whereby through obeying his commandments, the commandments of the Torah, and whereby being no different now than the native born, and whereby now being privy to the same covenant, everlasting covenant and promise and inheritance, the very same one that was given only to YAHUAH and to YAHUAH alone. Shalom, shalom to the whole Bayif of YAHUAH, to the elder Ak Yehuda and the younger Ak Ephraim, and to the stranger who has enjoined himself to us. Wherever your feet touch the soil on this preparation yom, shalom, shalom to you, Mishpaka. From my home, from my Bayif, from my house to yours. Shalom, shalom. Mishpaka, you have no doubt seen the title of this teaching, a woman's covering. A woman's covering. You've no doubt seen it already. And Yahuwah has sent his servant by today to establish order, to establish right ruling and order in his house, in the house of YAHUAH, all who would call themselves Yashalim, who will call themselves Natsarim or Messianic or whatever it may be. He has called me, sent me by today to establish order in his house, to establish order or to reestablish order in his house. So we understand that in the beginning, the first command or the first words that Abba Yahuwah uttered were, "Let there be light. Let there be light." Now, the Abrahamic word here used for light is the Abrahamic word Aur. Aur. Aleph U Rash. Aleph U Rash. The letter Aleph is symbolized by an ox, and it denotes power. It denotes power. It denotes Yahuwah, because Yahuwah is who? He is the Aleph and the Tau, the beginning and the everlasting covenant. The U is represented by a tent peg, and it is used to adjoin or to fix or to affix things together. It is used to join or to fix things together. The Rash, the letter Rash, it means the beginning. It means the beginning, hence Barashif. Ba means in the, Rashif means the beginning. Barashif in the beginning. So Rash denotes beginning. Rash denotes beginning. And so here in the very beginning, the Aleph, and the Rash, the head, who is order. Who is order. Again, he is the Aleph, and he is also the head. He is light. He is a living light. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. He is the eternal light. He is the everlasting light. He is the living menorah, and he is light. He is pure light. He is unadulterated, pure light, and there is no darkness or disorder in him. Indeed, the Abrahamic word for darkness is kashak, and it means chaos or disorder or distress. And so in the beginning, there was chaos. There was chaos. There was kashak. There was darkness. And Yahuwah came in and uttered these words, "Let there be light." let there be light. And so much, Paka, if darkness is disorder, then order is light. Order is light. Indeed, Yahuwah is light. He is an Elohim of order. He is not an Elohim of disorder. He is order. And so in the beginning, he established order. He established order. And so from this, we understand that he is that light. And this very same word here, or, is the very same Abrahite word used in Proverbs, the 6th chapter and the 23rd verse, where it declares that Torah is light. This word, or, is used there. And so from this, then, we can deduce that what? Torah is order. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is why or sounds a lot like order. Torah is order. Darkness is disorder. Torah is righteousness. Darkness is unrighteousness. Indeed, Torah is order. And lawlessness or disobedience to Torah is disorder. It is disorder. Yahuwah will not dwell in disorder. He is the Eluah of order. He is the living Torah. He is Torah. He is light, which is Torah or order. Baruch Yahuwah. Baruch Yahuwah. So he sent me here. Sent me by to establish some order. He's sent me by to speak about Torah and to establish order and how that relates to a woman's covering. A woman's covering. Many of you may note that I'm wearing a cover on this yom. That is purposeful for me to wear this cover during this teaching, because I had stopped wearing coverings, not because there was anything wrong with it, but because I did not want to take the attention away from Yahuwah. I want him to get all of the esteem because I am just a dirt vessel. But for the purpose of this teaching, I am wearing a covering. And we're going to talk about that later on, but this is purposeful. This is purposeful, and the purpose of it is to dispel ignorance. To dispel ignorance. Nevertheless, before we get into this teaching, before Abba begins to teach through me, little housekeeping. There was a video that Yahuwah made through me maybe a couple of months back. It was actually a Shabbat teaching with regards to Zizis. I think it was entitled to Zizit or not to Zizit. Some have watched that teaching, and if you've watched that teaching, you will note that Abba spoke through me that your Zizit should be a particular color. I'm not going to discuss that in this teaching because this teaching isn't about that. But in that teaching, it was discussed that your Zizits, if you can see this, I pray that that is zooming in, should be a specific color. And those colors are red, or scarlet, blue, and purple. Scarlet, blue, and purple. Now, if you want to know the reason that they should be scarlet, blue, and purple, go and check out that teaching or that video. Nevertheless, since that teaching, some have emailed me and some have messaged me on Facebook with respect to where can they get these Zizis? Where can they get these specific colors? I'm sure you can get them from anywhere. I'm sure, I would imagine you can, but I don't get mine from anywhere. I have a sister who makes these. A beloved sister. Her name is Mikahala. Her name is spelled Mykahala. Mikahala. And she makes these. She makes these, and she does a wonderful job. And so if you are interested in the proper colors for Zizits, and that is again scarlet, blue, and purple. If you want to know the reason that they're scarlet, blue, and purple, go and check out the video to Zizit or not to Zizit. But if you are interested in these colors in Zizits, Mikahala, my sister, she makes them, and you can contact her via email, and her email address is as follows: lady, L-A-D-Y, Lane, L-A-N-E, 154 at gmail.com. At gmail.com. Again, that is Lady Lane, L-A-D-Y, L-A-N-E, one word, 154, inclusive of the word, no spaces, at gmail.com. At gmail.com. Nevertheless, let's get into this teaching. A woman's covering. And Abba has sent me by to establish order in his house on this day. He has sent me by to establish order. And so it's establishing that order. Let's look at the very beginning. At the very beginning, Baruch. Let's look at the very beginning in looking at this established order that Yahuwah himself has ordained. Let's look at this established order because it's gotten, quite frankly, way out of hand. Way, way, way out of hand. And Abba has sent me by, for whomever has ears to hear and eyes to see, he has sent me by to proclaim order and to establish and reestablish his order, which was ordained from the very beginning. And so let's take a look. And this will probably be 2 videos. Both will be put out today, Yahuwah willing. But this will probably be 2 videos. But let's look at the very beginning of Baruch, the first chapter. And I'm going to read verses 25 through 31. I want you to listen very carefully. And Elohim said, let us make man, Adam, in our image, according to our likeness. I'm not going to talk about our. I'll just briefly touch this. When he says our here, he's talking about the Malachim. He's talking about the Malachim. He's not some Trinity. He is not a Trinity. He is talking about the Malachim. More in particular, the messenger of the presence. Who is the messenger of the presence? The messenger of the presence is Yahuwah in the person of Yahusha. In the person of Yahusha. I'm not going to address that, but this is what it means. Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the Shamaim, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over all the creeping creatures that creep on the ground. And Elohim created the man in his image. Listen. And Elohim created the man in his image. In the image of Elohim, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And Elohim Baruch them. And Elohim said to them, be fruitful and increase, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and listen, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the Shamaim, and over all creeping creatures on the earth. And Elohim said, see, I have given you every plant that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, of the Yarats, and every tree whose fruit yields seed, to you it is for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the Shamaim, and to every creeping creature on the earth, in which there is a living being, every green plant is for food. And it came to be so. And Elohim saw all that he had made, and see, it was very good. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the 6th day. So here in the very first chapter of Baruch, we see that Yahuwah gave dominion over the Yarats and everything in the Yarats to who? To Adam, to mankind. Male and female, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Both male and female were initially to what? To co-rule. To co-rule the Yarats. This is what the text says. I'm not making it up. This is what the text says. Male and female were created initially to rule, to co-equally, to co-rule the Yarats. Yes, they were. Yes, they were. Don't get mad at me. This is the text. This is the text. But what happened? What happened? What happened? As we read, they were initially co-equally to rule and co-equally to rule the Yarats together. Male and female, he created them to rule over the Yarats. You can go back and read it yourselves. Genesis 1, verses 26 through 31. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. So what happened? Let's look at Baruch for Genesis, the 2nd chapter. We're going to read here verses 7 through 25. Listen. And Yahuwah Elohim formed the man out of the dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils breath of life. And the man became a living being. And Yahuwah Elohim planted a garden in Adon to the east, and there he put the man whom he had formed. And out of the ground Yahuwah Elohim made every tree grow that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. And with the tree of life in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And a river went out of Adon to water the garden. And from there it divided and became 4 heads. The name of the first is Pishon. It is the one surrounding the entire land of YAHUAH'S, where there is gold. And the gold of the land is good. Bedilim is there, and the Shufam, and the Shuham, and the Shuhan stone. And the name of the second river is Gihon. It is the one surrounding the entire land of Cush. And the name of the third river is Kedikal. It is the one which goes towards the east of Ashur. And the fourth river is the Euphrates. And Yahuwah Elohim took the man and put him in the garden of Adon to work it and to guard it. And Yahuwah Elohim commanded the man, saying, Eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die. Do you hear? This is the first commandment, the first everlasting commandment that he gave man. The first everlasting commandment that he gave mankind. Eat of every tree of the garden, but do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall certainly die. And Yahuwah Elohim said, It is not good for the man to be alone. I'm going to make a helper for him. A helper for him, listen, as his counterpart. As his counterpart. A helper, Azar, for him, as his counterpart, Nagab, as his counterpart, or co-equal. Are you listening? This is in the text. Yes, it is. It's in the text. And from the ground, Yahuwah Elohim formed every beast of the field and every bird of the Shamayim, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. Are you listening? And brought them to the man to see what he would call them, or name them. And whatever the man called each living being, that was its name. That was its name. So the man gave names. Shamim. He gave names to all livestock, and to the birds of the Shamayim, and to every beast of the field. But for the man there was not found a Azar, a helper for him, as his counterpart, as his Nagab, his counterpart, co-equal. So Yahuwah Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on the man. And he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. And the rib which Yahuwah Elohim had taken from the man, he made into a woman. Let's look at the Abarit. Let me go back. Man, the Abarit word for man is Aish. And the Abarit word for woman is Aisha. And so here it reads. It reads again. And the rib which Yahuwah Elohim had taken from the Aish, he made into a Aisha. And he brought her to the man. And he brought her to the Aish. And the Aish, the man, said, This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one is called Aisha. This is not her name. This is what she's called. We read above that he named them. He named the animals. He did not name the woman. He called her Aisha. This is not her name. He called her Aisha because she was taken out of Aish. For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, to his Aisha, and they shall become one flesh, one akad, one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, yet they were not ashamed. Yet they were not ashamed. Genesis 3, Baruch, the 3rd chapter, verses 1 through 21. Now we just read in Baruch chapter 1 that he created man and woman, Aish and Aisha, to co-equally rule the Araz. Baruch chapter 2, it talks about an Azar, a helper, a counterpart, a Nagab, a co-equal to what? To help him rule the Araz. Yeah, this is what it says. This is what it says. To help man rule the Araz, because indeed they both are considered mankind, Adam. They both are considered Adam. Now here, Adam calls her Aisha because he is Aish, but she does not have a name yet. Yet he named the animals. He named the bull a bull and ox an ox. He named the sheep a sheep, a goat a goat. He named an eagle, but he did not name the Aisha. Let's read on. Baruch, Genesis 3rd chapter, verse 1 through 21. And the Nakash was more crafty than all the lives of the field, which YAHUAH'S had made. And he said to the woman, to the Aisha, is it true that Elohim has said, do not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman, the Aisha, said to the Nakash, we are to eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said, do not eat of it, nor touch it, lest you die. And the Nakash said to the woman, you shall certainly not die. For Elohim knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one kakum, which is to say prudent, which they falsely call wise wizard. And she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were open, and they knew that they were naked. They knew that they were naked. Now, this is what Torah does. This is what Torah does. Torah is what? It is light. It shines light on darkness. It shines light on nakedness. Now, but while they were obeying Torah, they had no idea that they were naked. They had no idea that they were unclean, that they were criminals, that they were crooked. You see, this is what nakedness implies. Nakedness implies uncleanness. It is unclean to be naked. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is unclean to be naked. And so when they transgressed Torah, their nakedness was exposed. This is what Torah does. And when their nakedness was exposed, they were ashamed. Yes, they were. You see, this is what Torah should do. It should cause a righteous sorrow. It should cause a righteous sorrow, and it should cause us to be ashamed. And this is what it did to Adam and Kua. Listen here. Yes, it did. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loin coverings for themselves. Why would they sew loin coverings for themselves if they were not ashamed of their nakedness? Yes, they were. Yes, they were. And when they transgressed Torah, their nakedness, their crime, their uncleanness was exposed. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. This is what Torah does. And they heard the voice of Yahuwah Elohim walking about in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife, his Aisha, them hid themselves from the presence of Yahuwah Elohim among the trees of the garden. And Yahuwah Elohim called unto Adam and said to him, where are you? And he said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. And he said, who made you know that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree which I commanded you that you should not eat? Yes, he did. And when he transgressed Torah, his nakedness was exposed. This is what Torah does, which should prompt a righteous sorrow, and should in turn cause us to fall at the feet of Yahuwah, our husband, to seek him for forgiveness, which is what? Which is covering. When he forgives us, he covers our shame. He covers our nakedness. This is what Torah should do. It should call us to be ashamed, to seek Yahuwah for forgiveness, so that he will forgive us and cover our nakedness and cover our shame, cover our crime. Baruch Yahuwah. And the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, She gave me of the fruit of the tree, and I ate. And Yahuwah Elohim said to the woman, listen here, said to the Aisha, what is this you have done? And the woman said, the Nakash deceived me, and I ate. And Yahuwah Elohim said to the Nakash, because you have done this, you are cursed more. Listen to this judgment here. Listen to the judgment. This is judgment. This is judgment. And Yahuwah's judgments are eternal. They are eternal. So now Yahuwah is pronouncing judgment. Because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the livestock and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you are to go and eat dust all the days of your life. And I put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall crush your head, and you shall crush his heel. Listen, judgment continues. Judgment continues. And this judgment is going to be in place, listen, until Shamayim and Aratz passes away. This judgment decreed by the mouth of Yahuwah is going to remain in place until Shamayim and Aratz passes away. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Listen, to the woman he said, I greatly increase your sorrow and your conception. Bring forth children in pain. And your desire is for your husband, and he does rule over you. And he does rule over you. Oh, how she fell. In the beginning, he created a what? An Azar, a helper, a Nagab, a counterpart to help her husband co-equally rule the Aratz. Yes, she was. That's why she was created. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But when she transgressed the command to not partake of the fruit and she fell, now she went from being co-ruler with Adam to being ruled over. To being ruled over. And your desire is for your husband, and he does rule over you. And he does rule over you. And to the man he said, because you have listened to the voice of your Aisha, and have eaten of the tree which I commanded you, saying, do not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you are to eat of it all the days of your life. And the ground shall bring forth thorns and thistles for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you are to eat bread until you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you return. This is the judgment. This is the judgment, and this judgment is going to be in place until the earth and Shamayim, or heavens, passes away. And so man, Adam, who also was a ruler, he went from being a ruler to what? To being ruled over. Ruled over by who? By Hashatan. Hashatan then became the ruler of this world when Adam freely gave it to him by obeying him. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And so this is going to be in place until this judgment has played out. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The woman is to submit, and her husband is to rule over her by childbearing. In pain will she bear children. Her desire is to be for her husband, who will rule over her. The man is to work the soil by the sweat of his brow. He is to eat and to do what? Provide for his Aisha until he returns to the dust. This is the order now. This is the re-established order that was established after the fall. That was an order that was before the fall, where Yahuwah created an Azar Nagab, a helper, a counterpart, to help man to co-equally rule the Aratz. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Read it again. Genesis 1, 26 through 31, chapter 2 and chapter 3. Yes, he did. But then after the fall, after Kuah partook of the fruit, and they understood their shame, there was a redistribution of power. And there was a new order. There was a new order whereby now they're no longer co-equal. Now the man is to rule over her. She is to bear children. And he is to work the soil by the sweat of his brow, by his hands is he to eat until he returns to the soil. And he is to provide and protect his and protect his Aisha. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Listen here. And the man called his wife's name Kua. And the man called his wife's name Kua, because she became the mother of all living. Yahuwah Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his Aisha and dressed them. Now, when he made the coats of skin, he had compassion on his children, and he did what? He covered their shame. He covered their nakedness. He covered their uncleanness. He covered their crime. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. We're still talking about a woman's covering. Yes, we are. We're still talking about a woman's covering, but I bring your attention now back to the fact that Adam did not name Kua until after the fall. Until after the fall. Why? If you'll note, he named the animals because why? Because Yahuwah gave him dominion over them. He was to rule over them. He was to rule over the animals, over the beasts of the field and the birds of the air and the fish of the sea. He was given dominion over them, to rule over them. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Thus, he named them because he was their ruler. And so he named them, name it and claim it. Yes, he named them. Now, he did not name Kua at first. He simply called her Aisha because he was Aish. He simply called her Aisha. And so now, after the fall, when he now begins to rule over her, now he names her Kua. Now he names her Kua. And indeed, this judgment, don't get mad at me, this judgment pronounced by the mouth of Yahuwah is going to be in place until the Shamayim and Araz passes away. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Now let's read this in Jubilees from a different perspective. Let's read this this story again in from Jubilees, or Jubileem, the second chapter, verse 14 through 16, beginning at verse 14. And on the sixth day, he created all the animals of the earth and all cattle and everything that moves on the earth. And after all this, he created man. A man and woman created he them. A man and woman created he them, and gave him, are you listening, dominion over all that is upon the earth. I'm going to read that again. And after all this, he created man, a man and a woman created he them, and gave him dominion over all that is upon the earth and in the seas, and over everything that flies, and over beasts, and over cattle, and over everything that moves on the earth, and over the whole earth, and over the whole earth. And over all this he gave him dominion. And these four kinds he created on the sixth day. And there were altogether 22 kinds. 22 kinds. Let's look at Jubilees, the third chapter. Jubileem, the third chapter. And on the 6 days of the second week, we brought, according to the word of Elohim, we is the messengers here. These are the messengers that are speaking to Masha on Mount Sinai. It was Masha who wrote the book of Jubilees, or Jubileem. Jubilees is sometimes called Little Barashif, or Little Genesis, because these words were also spoken to Masha on Mount Sinai by the messenger of the presence. By the messenger of the presence. And on the 6 days of the second week, we brought, according to the word of Elohim, unto Adam all the beasts, and all the cattle, and all the birds, and everything that moves on the earth, and everything that moves in the water, according to their kinds, and according to their types. The beasts on the first day, the cattle on the second day, the birds on the third day, and all that which moves on the earth on the fourth day, and that which moves in the water on the fifth day. And Adam named them all by their respective names. And Adam named them all by their respective names. Why? Because he had dominion over them. He ruled over them. He ruled over them. He did not name Kua until after the fall, when he began to rule over her. This is the judgment, woman. This is the judgment. And it behooves you to fall in line with this judgment. Your deliverance, your very deliverance, is incumbent upon you submitting to this judgment. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We're going to get into this further down below. Not my words, but the word of Yahuwah himself. He's already spoken it anyway. So if you have that feminist spirit in you, that Ayiza Baruch in you, and you're already mad and turning this off, that's not my problem. That's not my problem. I'm here as a messenger of truth to establish order. That's not my problem. You want to submit, woman. You want to submit. This is the judgment. This is the judgment. This is the judgment of Yahuwah, and it will be in place until Shamayim and Araz passes away. And as he called them, so was their name. And on these 5 days, Adam saw all these, male and female, according to every kind that was on the earth. But he was alone, and found no helpmeet for him. And Yahuwah said unto us, it is not good that the man should be alone. Let us make a helpmeet, Azar, a helper for him. And Yahuwah Eloheinu, our Elohim, caused a deep sleep to fall upon him. And he slept, and he took for the woman one rib from amongst his ribs. And his rib was the origin of the woman from amongst his ribs. And he built up the flesh in its stead, and built the woman. And he awakened Adam out of his sleep. And on the awakening he rose on the 6th day, and he brought her to him. And he knew her, and said unto her, this is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, or Aisha, because she was taken from her Aish. Because she was taken from her Aish. Now, before I continue to read, the point has been made that they were created co-equal. They were created co-equal. They were created to be Akkad. Yes, they were. Yes, they were. Aish and Aisha were created to be Akkad. Let the two become one. Akkad, one flesh. Yes, that's what the text says. Let the two become one. Akkad. They were created to be one. Co-equal. Co-equal. But after the fall, there was what? There was a split. There was a split. As crime separates us from Yahuwah, crime separated Aish and Aisha. There was a split. There was a separation. And so in time, as this judgment is being played out, and I'm not going to get ahead of myself, as this judgment is now being played out, when man and woman come together in the act of sex, this is simulating Aish and Aisha coming together and becoming one again. We're going to become one again. We're being, all things are being restored. And at the appointed time, Aish and Aisha are going to become one again. But now, until this judgment is played out, we are separate. We are separate. But when we come together in the act of sex and become Akkad, this is a simulation, a symbolic of us coming together, being one. And this is symbolic of, at the completion of all things, of us becoming Akkad, a one, once again, and co-rulers of this Aratz once again. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I pray that you're opening your nefesh to this, to understand. Reading on. Therefore shall man and woman be one, and therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and cleave unto his woman, and they shall be one flesh. In the first week was Adam created, and the rib his woman. In the second week he showed her unto him. And for this reason the commandment was given to keep in their defilement for a male 7 days, and for a female twice 7 days. You can find this in Leviticus or Uikra chapter 12. And after Adam had completed 40 days in the land where he had been created, we brought him into the garden of Adam to till and guard it. But his woman they brought in on the 80th day, and after this she entered into the garden of Adam. And for this reason the commandment is written, on the tablets of Shamayim in regards to her that gives birth. If she bears a male, she shall remain in her uncleanness 7 days, according to the first week of days. And 3 days shall she remain in the blood of her purifying. And she shall not touch any separate thing, nor enter into the separate place, until she accomplishes these days, which are enjoined in the case of a male child. And again, this is in Uikra, Leviticus chapter 12. It has witnesses. Yes, it does. But in the case of a female child, she shall remain in her uncleanness 2 weeks of days, according to the first 2 weeks, and 66 days in the blood of her purification, and they shall be in all 80 days. And when she had completed these 80 days, we brought her into the garden of Adam, for it is more kadosh, or more separate, than all the earth besides, and every tree that is planted in it is separate, or kadosh. Therefore, there was ordained regarding her who bears a male or a female child, the statute of those days, that she should touch no separate thing, nor enter, or kadosh thing, nor enter the kadosh place, which here says sanctuary, until these days for the male or female child are accomplished. This is Torah. This is Torah found in Uikra chapter 12. This is the Torah and testimony which was written down for YAHUAH'S, in order that they should observe all the days. And in the first week of the first Jubilee, Adam and his woman were in the garden of Adam for 7 years, tilling and guarding it. And we gave him work, and we instructed him to do everything that is suitable for tillage. That is suitable for tillage. So we see here, even though they were co-equally to rule, there was still some roles established here. This is before the fall. There was still some roles established. He was to work the garden, but it was not to be strenuous work. It was not to be toil. It was not to be toil. The toil didn't come in until after the fall. So even before the fall, Adam was ordained to work and to do what? Provide for his Aisha. There were still roles. Even though they were to co-equally rule, there were still roles to be observed. And he tilled the garden, and was naked, and knew it not, and was not ashamed, because they had not transgressed Torah. The transgression of Torah brings forth shame. It brings forth nakedness. It reveals nakedness. And he protected the garden from the birds and beasts and cattle, and gathered its fruit, and ate, and put aside the remnant for himself, listen, and put aside the remnant for himself and for his woman. Yes, man. Yes, Aish. These roles were even established even before the fall. You are to provide for your woman. She is not to provide for you. You are to provide for her. You are to protect her. You are to provide her clothing. You are to provide her food. You are to provide her marital rights. You are to provide her shelter. Yes, you are. You are to do these things. You are to do these things. There's more that's required, and we may talk about that in this teaching. But you are to provide for her. She is not to provide for you. And this role was established even before the fall. Even before the fall. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And this is a foreshadowing of our husband, who is going to provide for us throughout eternity. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is a foreshadowing of our husband, Yahuwah, who is going to provide for us throughout eternity. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Reading here, and after the completion of 7 years were completed there, 7 years exactly. Let me go back up and start where I left off. And he tilled the garden, and was naked, and knew it not, and was not ashamed. And he protected the garden from the birds and the beasts and cattle, and gathered its fruits, and ate, and put aside the remnant for himself and for his woman, and put aside that which was being kept. And after the completion of 7 years, which he had completed there, 7 years exactly, and in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, the serpent came and approached the woman. And the serpent said to the woman, Has Elohim commanded you, saying, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And she said to it, Of all the fruit of the trees of the garden, of Elohim has said unto us, Eat. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Elohim has said unto us, you shall not eat thereof, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said unto the woman, the Nakash, said unto the Aisha, you shall not surely die. For Elohim knows that on the day you shall eat thereof, your eyes shall be opened, and you will be as Elohim, and you will know good and evil. And the woman saw the tree, that it was agreeable and pleasant to the eye, and that its fruit was good for food. And she took thereof and ate. And when she had first covered, listen here, and when she had first covered her shame with fig leaves. Now we're still talking about a woman's covering, but you'll note I have not mentioned a head covering yet. I have not mentioned a head covering yet, but we're talking about a woman's shame. And when she had first covered her shame with fig leaves, she gave thereof of Adam, and he ate. And his eyes were opened, and he saw that he was naked. And he took fig leaves and sewed them together, and made an apron for himself, and covered his shame. And covered his shame. Indeed, nakedness is shame. Nakedness is uncleanness. Nakedness is crime. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And Elohim cursed the serpent, the Nakash, and was wroth with it forever. So here, we're talking about the covering of shame, but we haven't mentioned a head covering yet. We haven't mentioned a head covering yet we're talking about covering the woman's covering. We're talking about a woman's covering. We ain't talked about yet. What's mentioned here is that they covered their nakedness, is that they covered their shame. They covered their shame. This is very foundational. This is very foundational to this teaching. Very foundational to this teaching. And he was wroth with the woman because she hearkened to the voice of the serpent and did eat. And he said unto her, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your pains. And in sorrow you shall bring forth children. This is the judgment that was repeated, that was mentioned in Baruch, the 3rd chapter, and the 16th verse. And your return shall be unto your man, your Aish, and he will rule over you. Baruch YAHUAH, out of the mouth of 2 or more witnesses, let every matter be established. And he will rule over you. So the rule did not come over woman, over Aisha, until she fell. Until she fell. And to Adam also, he said, because you have hearkened unto the voice of your woman, your Aisha, and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you that you should not eat thereof. Cursed be the ground for your sake. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to you. Now he's got to toil to get his food, whereas before he did not. He had to work, but he did not have to toil for his food. And you shall eat your bread in the sweat of your face, till you return to the earth from whence you were taken. For earth you are, and unto earth you shall return. And he made for them coats of skin, and clothed them, and sent them forth from the garden of Eden. He clothed them and covered their shame. And covered their shame. Baruch YAHUAH. We're going to talk about this further in this teaching down below. Line by line, precept upon precept. Here a little, there a little. We're talking about a woman's covering. We're talking about a woman's covering. And on that day, on which Adam went forth from the garden, he offered as a sweet savor an offering, frankincense, galbanum, and stocti, and spices in the morning, with the rising of the sun, from the day when he covered his shame. From the day when he covered his shame. From the day when YAHUAH made skins, slew 2 lambs. But by the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. You see, this was established in the garden. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. He slew 2 lambs, and he covered their shame. He covered their crime. He covered their nakedness. And on that day was closed the mouth of all beasts, and of cattle, and of birds, and of whatsoever walks, and of whatsoever moves, so that they should no longer speak. For they had all spoken one with another, with one lip, and with one tongue. And he sent out of the garden of Eden all flesh that was in the garden of Eden. And all flesh was scattered according to its kinds, and according to its types, unto the places which had been created for them. And to Adam alone, listen, and to Adam alone did he give the wherewithal to cover his shame. What does this mean? What does this mean? How do you have the wherewithal to cover your shame? What is shame? Shame is crime. Shame is uncleanness. How do you have the wherewithal to cover your shame? Via the Torah. Via the Torah. So he gave Torah to Adam. He didn't give it to Kua. He gave Torah to Adam. He did not give it to Kua. Women ain't got no business teaching men. No, you don't. No, you don't. You do not have any business teaching men. You're out of order if you're teaching men. If you're teaching men, you're operating in a feminist Baruch. You have no business teaching men. No, you don't. No, you don't. Or exercising authority over men. Or exercising authority over the men. The judgment is that man will rule over you until Shamayim and Arats passes away. This is the judgment. This is the decree. You have no business teaching men. The Torah here, the wherewithal to cover his shame, and this is Torah that exposes nakedness, that exposes crime, was given to Adam. It was not given to Kua, of all the beasts and cattle. And so there are things that Yahuwah reveals to his servants, to men, that he doesn't reveal to his servants, to his female servants. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is order. This is order. This is the established order. This is Yahuwah's order. Don't get mad at me. Get mad at him. Get mad at him. This is the established order, and it behooves you to align yourselves with this established order if you expect to gain eternal life. On this account, it is prescribed on the tablets in Shamayim as touching all those who know the judgment of the Torah. Are you listening? As touching all those who know the judgment of the Torah, that they should cover their shame. That they should cover their shame. This is Torah. This is Torah. We cover ourselves. This is why it is in Torah that we are to what? Clothe the naked. We are to clothe the naked. We're to not to let them go naked, because it's shameful to be naked. It is shameful to go naked. And so we are to clothe the naked. We don't uncover ourselves. We clothe ourselves. And should not, let me read this again. On this account, it is prescribed on the tablets in Shamayim, as touching all those who know the judgment of the Torah, that they should cover their shame, and should not uncover themselves as the other nations, as the Gentiles uncover themselves. You see, this is why amongst the Gentiles, amongst the nations, they uncover themselves. The men and women walk about gladly dressed, showing themselves, unveiling their nakedness. Why? Because they reject the Torah. Because they reject the Torah. See, you cannot reject Torah and go around naked. You cannot. You cannot, because Torah is going to reveal your nakedness. A righteous sorrow is going to come upon you, and Torah is going to reveal your nakedness and reveal your shame. You see, they are Torah-less. They are Torah-less, and so they have no shame. They don't know it's shameful to be naked, and thus you see them going around naked, showing themselves. But we who have the Torah, who are children of light, we don't uncover ourselves like them, because we have the Torah, and we know that it is shameful, that it is unclean to go about naked, to go about naked. They don't, because they reject the righteous Torah. And on the new month of the 4th month, Adam and his woman went forth from the garden of Adam, and they dwelt in the land of Adam, in the land of their creation. And Adam called the name of his woman Kua. And Adam called the name of his woman Kua. Here again, out of the mouth of 2 or more witnesses, let every matter be established. And so here, after the fall, once again, Adam names his wife. Whereas before, when he wasn't ruling over her, he didn't name her. But after the fall, he named her. He named her. And so symbolic of him having rule over her. And this rule is going to be in place until Shamayim and Arats passes away. We're going to talk about this more down below in this teaching. And they had no son till the first Jubilee. And after this, he knew her. Now he tilled the land as he had been instructed in the garden of Eden. Now he tilled the land as he had been instructed in the garden of Eden. So we're still talking here about a woman's covering, But we see here now, when Adam and Kua transgressed the Torah, that they realized that they were naked and they were ashamed. And then Yahuwah, their husband, what did he do? He covered their shame. He covered their shame. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He covered their shame. Let's take a look now. Let's take a look at, I'm going to read Chazon chapter 19 because we are connecting the dots here, line by line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. So I'm going to read Chazon Revelation 19, and then I'm going to read Chazon chapter 20 just to establish something here. Just to establish the fact that this judgment will be in place until Shamayim and Aratz passes away. Let's look at Chazon, Revelation chapter 19, verses 1 through 21. And after this I heard a loud voice of a great crowd in the Shamayim saying, Hallelujah, deliverance and esteem and respect and power to Yahuwah our Elohim, because true and righteous are his judgments, because he has judged the great whore, who corrupted the earth with her whoring, and he has avenged on her the blood of his servants, shed by her. And a second time they said, Hallelujah, and her smoke rises up forever and ever. And the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures fell down and worshiped Elohim, who sat on the throne, saying, Amen, Hallelujah. And a voice came from the throne, saying, Praise our Elohim, all you his servants, and those who revere him, both small and great. And as the voice of a great crowd, as the sound of many waters, and as the sound of mighty thunder, saying, Hallelujah, for Yahuwah Al Shaddai reigns. Let us be glad and celebrate and give him praise, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife, his Aisha, prepared herself. And to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen. And his wife prepared herself. And to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen, clean and bright. For the fine linen is the righteousness of the Kadosh ones. Here, what is he doing? He's covering his wife's shame. He's clothing his wife. He's clothing her shame. He is clothing her in what? In his righteousness. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. He's clothing his wife, just like he did in the beginning, when he clothed Adam and Kua and clothed and covered their shame. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. We're still talking about a woman's covering. Yes, we are. We're still talking about a woman's covering. Many of you, by the picture, think that we're talking about a head covering. Oh, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. But now we're talking about a different type of covering, but we're still talking about a woman's covering. Yes, we are. And he said to me, Write, Baruch are those who have been called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said to me, These are the true words of Elohim. And I fell at his feet to worship him. But he said to me, See, do not do it. I am your fellow servant, and of your brothers who possess the witness of Yahusha. Worship Elohim, for the witness of Yahusha is the root of Nabiah, which is to say prophecy. And I saw the Shamayim open, and there was a white horse, and he who sat on him, was called trustworthy and true. And in righteousness he judges and fights. And his eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, having a name that had been written, which no one had perceived except himself. And having been dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Yahuwah. And the armies of the Shamayim, dressed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations. And he shall shepherd them with a rod of iron. And he treads the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Al Shaddai. And on his robe and on his thigh he had a name written, Sovereign of Sovereigns and Master of Masters. And I saw one messenger standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the birds that fly in mid-Shamayim, come and gather together for the supper of the great Elohim, to eat the flesh of sovereigns, and the flesh of commanders, and the flesh of strong ones, and the flesh of horses, and of those who sit on them, and the flesh of all people, free and slave, both small and great. And I saw the beast and the sovereigns of the earth, and their armies gathered together to fight him who sat on the horse and his army. And the beast was seized, and with him the false Nabi, which is to say false prophet, who worked signs in his presence, by which he led astray those who received the mark of the beast, and those who worship his image. The two were thrown alive into the lake of fire burning with sulfur, and the rest were killed with the sword which came from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. Kazun, Revelation chapter 20. Kazun, Revelation chapter 20, and Revelation chapter 19, and I had to read that to set the stage. In Kazun, Revelation 19, we find YAHUAH'S return. And there's a great battle that takes place between him and the beast and his armies. And we find that he slew the beast there. He slew the beast and the false Nabi and bound them and threw them into the lake of fire burning with sulfur. It also mentions in this about those who had prepared themselves. It talked about a prepared bride whom he had prepared, whom he had what? He had covered, he had clothed their shame. He had clothed their nakedness in bright linen. Linen is a representation of righteousness. And so what the husband had done was he had clothed his bride, his wife, in what? In his righteousness. And his righteousness. You see, this is what he does. This is what he does when we enter into a marriage with him. Yahushua HaMashiach, our husband, Yahuwah in flesh, he clothes us in his righteousness, and he covers our shame. He covers our shame. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. But we're still talking about a woman's covering. Yes, we are. We're still talking about a woman's covering, and we're talking about establishing or reestablishing proper order in the house of Yasha'al on this day. Kazum, Revelation chapter 20, verse 1 through 15. And I saw a messenger coming down from the Shamayim, having the key of the pit of the deep, and a great chain in his hand. And he seized the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And now this, here we're moving into the millennial reign. In chapter 19, he goes to battle with the beast, and he defeats the beast and his armies, and he binds the beast and the false Nabi, and chains them hand and foot, and cast them into the eternal lake of fire. Now here in chapter 20, now he has seized the dragon. He has seized the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan. And now he bound him for 1,000 years. And he threw him into the pit of the deep and shut him up and set a seal on him so that he should lead the nations no more astray until the 1,000 years were ended. Until the 1,000 years were ended. Now in chapter 19, there was a great slaughter. There was a great slaughter. In Revelation 19, which the precept of it is Zechariah, the 14th chapter. In Revelation 19, in precept in Zechariah, the 14th chapter, only a remnant of mankind is going to be left after the sword of Yahushua comes and the blood runs to the horse's bridle. Only a small remnant of mankind is going to be left when he brings his sword. Just a small remnant. Just a small remnant is going to be left. And so now in Revelation 19, he comes back and he slays millions, billions. He slays them. And so now there's only a remnant left. Only a remnant of mankind left. And if you read Zechariah 14, from new month to new month, actually, Zechariah 14 speaks to Sukkot. From Sukkot to Sukkot, every Sukkot, the remnant of mankind, the remnant means a small number, who did not come up against Yasha'al are going to come up to Jerusalem every Sukkot and worship and bow before the sovereign. A remnant, a remnant. Those who came up against Yasharal, a great army as innumerable as the sands of the sea, they were slain. They were slain, so that only a remnant was left. Only a remnant of left. Chapter 20 here, Hashatan is now bound. He is now bound for 1,000 years. For 1,000 years, and he's going to be bound, as it says here, during the millennial reign, during the 1,000-year millennial reign, during the 7,000th year, he's going to be bound for 1,000 years, so that he should lead the nations no more away until the 1,000 years were ended. Listen, and after that, he has to be released for a little while. And I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given to them. And the lives of those who had been beheaded because of the witness they bore to Yahusha, and because of the word of Elohim, and who did not worship the beast, nor his image, and did not receive his mark upon their foreheads or upon their hands. And they lived and reigned with Mashiach for 1,000 years. This is the millennial reign. This is the millennial rest. This is the first resurrection. This is the first fruit resurrection. This is the first fruit resurrection. Reading on. And the rest of the dead did not come to life until 1,000 years were ended. In the second resurrection. In the second resurrection. Those who won't guard Torah, who stiff-necked and just won't listen, you're going to get up in the second resurrection. You won't awake in the first resurrection, with the first resurrection of the elect, of the first fruit, with his firstborn son, Yasha'al. This is the first resurrection. This is the first resurrection. Baruch and Kadush is the one having part in the first resurrection. The second death possesses no authority over these. Those who are not guarding the commands and do not have the witness of Yahushua HaMashiach, you're playing Russian roulette. You're playing Russian roulette. In the second resurrection, some are going to rise to everlasting life, and some are going to rise to everlasting punishment, as written in the book of Daniel and Daniel chapter 12. The second death possesses no authority over these, but they shall be priests of Elohim, Kahanim of Elohim, and of Mashiach, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. And when the 1,000 years have ended, listen, this is why I've read this. And when the 1,000 years have ended, Satan shall be released from his prison, and he shall go out to lead the nations astray, which are in the four corners of the earth. Listen, Gog and Magog, commonly called Gog and Magog, to gather them together for battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea. Whose number is as of the sand of the sea. Now I ask you, if there was only a remnant left after the Mashiach came back, and indeed only a remnant is going to be left, if you precept that with Zechariah, the 14th chapter, or Zechariah, the 14th chapter, you know this to be true. So how did they go from being a remnant, to being after 1,000 years, to be as the sand of the sea? I read this, Mishpaka, to show that judgment where man will rule over Aisha, that judgment is still going to even be in play even during the millennial reign. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You see, children are still going to be produced during the millennial reign. During the millennial reign, there's not going to be any more pain during childbirth, and we're going to read a precept to prove that. There's not going to be any more pain during childbirth, but there's still going to be childbirth during the millennial reign, and Aisha is still going to be subject to Aish. This judgment is going to be in place until the Aras and Shamayim passes away. And the Aras and the Shamayim is not going to pass away until all is done. When is all done? After the 7,000 year, after the millennial rest, after the Shabbat day, after the 7,000 year, and we move into the last great day, the 8,000 year, when we move into eternity. At this point, this earth and that Shamayim and all of the Shamayim are going to pass away, in a great furnace of fire. They're going to pass away, and there's going to be a renewed Aratz and a renewed Shamayim. Then this judgment will be done away with. Because at this point, all will be done, and man and woman will be restored. Aish and Aisha will be restored as co-rulers of the Arats. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. And they came up over the breath. And so it behooves you, woman, to align yourself with proper order. And it behooves you, man, to align yourself with proper order and to provide for your Aisha. To provide food, clothing, marital rights, and shelter. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And they came up over the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the Kadush ones and the beloved city. And fire came down from Elohim out of the Shamayim and consumed them. And the devil who led them astray, who was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false Nabi are, where they were previously thrown. Where they were previously thrown before the 1,000 years began. Now, after the 1,000 years, he is seized and thrown into the very same lake of fire where they were at. But I read this to show you how mankind had multiplied in that 1,000 years, because there's still marriage here. Now, when the Hamashiach says there is no marriage and giving away in marriage in the reign, he's not talking about the millennial reign. He is talking about the renewing of the Arats and Shamayim. When the throne of Yahuwah, when the renewed Jerusalem comes down and there's a renewed Arats and a renewed Shamayim, there will not be any marriage and giving away marriage there. There will not be, because there we will be as the Malachim. Here in the millennial reign, we're not going to be as the Malachim. We're going to be as the resurrected Hamashiach. Whatever body he resurrected in, these are the resurrected bodies that we are going to have. But these bodies are not going to be able to enter, even those resurrected bodies, are not going to be able to enter the renewed Arats and the renewed Shamayim. Why? Because flesh and blood cannot enter the reign of Shamayim. It cannot. Flesh and blood cannot enter the reign of Shamayim. And so these bodies, even after the millennial reign, if you read 2nd Esdras, the 7th chapter, these bodies have to be destroyed after the millennial reign. Even the body that the Hamashiach is in, the body that Yahuwah is dwelling in the person of the Hamashiach, in accordance with 2 Esdras, will be destroyed at the end of the millennial reign, because flesh and blood cannot enter the reign of Shamayim. And so in the millennial reign, there's still going to be childbirth. This is why this vast army covered the face of the earth, coming up against Jerusalem a second time. And so again, this order that was established in Baruch because of the fall, with respect to woman bearing children, and with respect to her desire being for her husband, and her husband ruling over her, this order is going to remain in place until Shamayim and Arats passes away. This judgment must be carried out until Shamayim and Arats passes away. And so it behooves you to align yourself with order. And the devil who led them astray was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false Nabi are. And they shall be tortured day and night forever and ever. And I saw a great white throne, and him who was sitting on it, from whose face the earth, from whose face the earth and the Shamayim fled away. Now we're moving into the last great day. We're moving into the judgment. The judgment doesn't come until after the millennial reign. It does not come until after the millennial reign, when some in the second resurrection will arise to everlasting life, some to everlasting fire and sulfur. So here, when Yahuwah comes in his true form as pure light, the Shamayim and the Arats are going to flee away from his presence, because he is a consuming fire. And the Shamayim and the Arats are going to flee away from his presence. And now the judgment is coming, and now there's going to be here a renewed Arats and a new Shamayim. And if you read Revelation 21 and Revelation 22, this speaks of that. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before the throne, and books were open. This doesn't come again until after the millennial rest, until after the Shabbat day. 6,000 years mankind has been given to work, And on the 7,000th year will be a Shabbat Yom. A day to Yahuwah is 1,000 years. After the 1,000 years, we move into the 8,000th year, the last great day. This is what Sukkot points towards. The last great day, when the Sukkah and the booth of Yahuwah will come down from Shamayim. When the Arats and Shamayim will pass away, there will be a renewed Arat and a renewed Shamayim. And we will be given a renewed form. We will be given a renewed form. This goes to when John or Yahuchanan speaks, and he says that we do not know yet what we will be. But when we see him, we will be like him, because we will see him face to face. Who is he? Yahuwah. Yahuwah is not talking about Yahusha there. He's talking about Yahuwah. When we see him face to face, because no flesh shall see him and live. No flesh shall see him and live. Flesh and blood can't inherit the reign of Shamayim. So when we finally see him at this point in his true form, we're going to look like him. We're going to be like him. We're going to be restored, man and Aisha, and we're going to co-rule once again. We're going to co-rule once again. And in this form, there won't be any marriage or giving away in marriage. Listen. And the dead were judged from what was written in the books, according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead, and the sea gave up the dead who were in it, and the dead and Shaul gave up the dead who were in it. Let me read that again. And the sea gave up the dead who were in it, and death, this is the grave, and Shaul. You see, death, the grave, and Shaul are two different places. They're two different places. Shaul talks about the pit. This is the place where Hashatan, the pit, is the place where Hashatan is going to be sealed up for 1,000 years. And so the pit, there are some now who go to the pit, but that's not the burning lake of fire. That's Shaul. That's the pit. That is the place of eternal darkness. But that's not the lake of fire. That's only a temporary holding place. It is a place of punishment, but it is only a temporary holding place. Shaul, that temporary holding place, is going to give up those who are there, and they're going to be judged. The grave is going to give up its dead, and the sea is going to give up its dead who are in them, and they were judged, each one according to his works. And death and Shaul, and now the grave and the pit now are thrown into the lake of fire. Into the lake of fire. This is the second death. If anyone was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. How are we looking for time? Baruch Yahuwah, Baruch Yahuwah. Ishayahu, Isaiah, chapter 11, line by line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. Ishayahu, Isaiah, chapter 11, verse 1 through 16. And a rod shall come forth from the stump of Yishai, and a sprout, or commonly called Jesse, and a sprout from the roots shall be fruitful. The root of Yahuwah shall rest upon him, the root of Chakmah, which is falsely called wisdom and understanding, the root of counsel and might, the root of knowledge and the fear of Yahuwah, and shall make him breathe in the reverence of Yahuwah. And he shall not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and shall decide with straightness for the meek ones of the earth, and shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and slay the wrong with the breath of his lips. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and trustworthiness the girdle of his waist. And a wolf shall dwell with the lamb. Listen. And a wolf shall dwell with the lamb. This speaks to the millennial reign. This speaks to the millennial reign. And a wolf shall dwell with the lamb. And a wolf shall dwell with the lamb. And a leopard lie down with the young goat. And the calf and the young lion and the fatling together. And a little child leads them. And a little child leads them. Indeed, we're talking about the millennial reign. How are there little children in the millennial reign if there is no reproduction? Indeed, this judgment is going to be in place until the Shamayim and Arats passes away, and a renewed Arats and a renewed Shamayim appear. Thus, we must submit to this judgment. Our very salvation is incumbent upon us submitting humbling ourselves and submitting to this judgment. And a cow and a bear shall feed. Their young ones lie down together, and a lion eats straw like an ox. And the nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole, and a weaned child shall put his hand in the adder's den. They do no evil, nor destroy in all my Kadosh mountain, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of Yahuwah, as the waters cover the sea. And in that day there shall be a root of Yishai, commonly called Jesse, standing as a banner to the people. Unto him the nations shall seek, and his rest shall be esteemed. And it shall be in that day that Yahuwah sets his hand again a second time to recover the remnant of his people who were left from Ashur, and from Mashraim, and from Patros, and from Cush, and from Ailam, and from Shinar, and from Kamath, and from the islands of the sea. Indeed, this is the first resurrection. This is the millennial rest. This precept to this is Matthew 24, when he sends his messengers to the four corners of the Arats to gather his people, and two sticks then become one. Ephraim and Yehudah become one. He shall raise a banner for the nations and gather the outcasts of Yashar'al and assemble the dispersed of Yehudah. I just said it. Yashar'al being Ephraim, and assemble the dispersed of Yehudah from the four corners of the earth. This is the millennial reign. And the envy of Ephraim shall turn aside, and the adversaries of Yehudah be cut off. Ephraim shall now envy Yehudah, and Yehudah not trouble Ephraim. But they shall fly down upon the shoulders of the Philistines toward the west. Together they plunder the people of the east, their hand stretching forth on Adum and Moab, and the children of Ammon shall be subject to them. And Yahuwah shall put under the ban the tongue of the sea of Mashraim, and he shall wave his hand over the river with the might of his root, and shall strike it 7 streams, and shall cause men to tread it in sandals. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, those left from Ashur, as it was for Yashar'al in the day when he came up from the land of Mashraim. So I read that again as another precept to show that there's still going to be childbearing in the millennial reign. There's still going to be childbearing in the millennial reign because we find children there. We found children. I'm going to give you more precepts. I'm being leery of time. I'm going to give you more precepts, but this is why we find children there. And this is why I made a point to show there that was the millennial reign, and to show that children are going to be there, to show that there's still going to be childbearing. I pray that Revelation 20 has proven that, but line by line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, I pray that this truth is opened up to you. I'm going to read Zechariah, the 14th chapter, just a little bit in it, to show that only a remnant is going to be left when HaMashiach comes back. When the HaMashiach comes back. I'm going to read this scatteredly. It's going to be scattered. I'm going to read a little bit here and a little bit there. And I have 21 verses here, but I'm not going to read the whole 21 verses for the sake of time, verses 1 through 21. You can write that down and go back and read it, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read a few excerpts just to prove the point. See, a day shall come for Yahuwah, and your spoil shall be divided in your midst. And I shall gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem, and the city shall be taken. This precepts to Revelation 19. The houses plundered, the women ravished, half of the city shall go into exile, but the remnant of the people shall not be cut off from the city. And Yahuwah shall go forth, and he shall fight against those nations, as he fights in the day of battle. And in that day his feet shall stand upon the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from the east to the west, a very great valley, and half of the mountain shall move toward the north, and half of it toward the south. And you shall flee to the valley of my mountain, for the valley of the mountains reaches to Asal. And you shall flee as you fled in the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, sovereign of Yehudah. And Yahuwah my Elohim shall come, all the Kadosh ones with you, And in that day, and this is reminiscent again of Revelation 19 and Revelation 20, when it talks about those who were dressed in linen, who were dressed in righteousness. And in that day it shall be, there is no light, it is dark. And it shall be one day which is known to Yahuwah, neither day nor night, but at evening time there shall be light. And in that day it shall be that living waters flow from Jerusalem, half of them toward the eastern sea. And this, you can find a precept to this in Ezekiel chapter 40, reading from chapter 40 through chapter 47. This talks about the high eagle, the third high eagle, which will be in the in the millennial reign. In Ezekiel, it talks about the water flowing from underneath the Kadosh place. These are those waters. And in that day, it shall be that living waters flow from Jerusalem, half of them towards the eastern sea and half of them towards the western sea, in summer as well as in winter. And Yahuwah shall be sovereign over all the earth. In that day, there shall be one Yahuwah, and his name one. All the land shall be changed into a desert plain from Gaba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem, and she shall be raised up and inhabited in her place from Benjamin's gate to the place of the first gate and the corner gate, and from the tower of Canaan to the wine presses of the sovereign. And they shall dwell in her, and there shall be no more utter destruction, but Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited. And this is the plague, listen, with which Yahuwah plagues all the people who fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall decay while they stand on their feet, and their eyes decay in their sockets, and their tongues decay in their mouths. And it shall be in that day that a great confusion from Yahuwah is among them, and every one of them shall seize the hand of his neighbor, and his hand rise up against his neighbor's hand. And Yahudah shall fight at Jerusalem as well. And the wealth of all the nations round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver and garments in great quantities. So also is the plague on the house, on the horse, and on the mule, on the camel, and on the donkey, and on the cattle that are in those camps, as this plague. And it shall be that all who are left, listen, I'm reading this for this purpose, to show that only a remnant is going to be left after this. And so when reading Revelation 20, if we understand that there was only a remnant left, how then, after the 1,000 years, has mankind reproduced to that vast number, as vast as the sands of the sea? Because there's still going to be reproduction. And it shall be that all who are left from all the nations which came up against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to bow themselves to the sovereign, Yahuwah of hosts, and to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. To celebrate the festival of Sukkot. I'll stop there. I'll stop right there. As the point has been made there to show you that only a remnant is going to be left after the sword of Yahuwah, the sword of Yahusha comes when he comes to establish his millennial reign. His millennial reign. Let's look now at Isaiah chapter 65. Chapter 65, line by line, precept by precept. Here a little, here a little, there a little. We're going to establish a woman's covering. See, it is written before me. This is Isaiah chapter 65. I'm going to read verse 6 through 25. See, it is written before me, I am not silent, but shall repay. And I shall repay into their bosom your crookedness and the crookedness of your fathers together. And Yahuwah, who burned incense on the mountains, and said Yahuwah, let me read this again. See, it is written before me, I am not silent, but shall repay. And I shall repay into their bosom your crookedness and the crookedness of your fathers together, said Yahuwah, who burned incense on the mountains and reproached me on the hills. And I shall measure their former work into their bosom. Thus said Yahuwah, as the new wine is formed in the cluster, and one shall say, do not destroy it, for there is barakah in it. So I do for my servants. So I do for my servants' sake, not to destroy them all. And I shall bring forth a seed from Yakub, and from Yahudah, an heir of my mountains. And my chosen one shall inherit it, and my servants dwell there. And Sharon shall be a fold of flocks, and the valley of Achor a place for herds to lie down, for my people who have sought me. But you are those who forsake Yahuwah, who forget my Kadosh mountain, who prepare a table for God. And, you know, many still call on God. This is who they're calling on. This is who they're calling on. Who prepare a table for God. This is a Babylonian deity of fortune. Yes, it is. And who fill a drink offering for many. And who fill a drink offering for many. This is also another Babylonian deity. And I shall allot you to the sword, and let you all bow down to the slaughter, because I called, and you did not answer, and I spoke, and you did not hear. And you did evil before my eyes, and chose that which I did not delight. Therefore thus says the Master Yahuwah, see my servants eat, but you hunger. See my servants drink, but you thirst. See my servants celebrate, but you are put to shame. See my servants sing for gladness of heart, but you cry for sorrow of heart, and wail for breaking of root. And you shall leave your name as a curse to my chosen. For the Master Yahuwah shall put to death and call his servants by another name, so that he who barakah, who barakut, which is to say blesses himself in the earth, does barak, which is to say bless. I don't use these words because they're pagan. Bless denotes a pagan blood ritual. So I replace them with clean Abarit words. I do not say bless, I use barak. Himself in the Elohim of truth. And he who swears in the earth does swear by the Elohim of truth. Because the former distresses shall be forgiven, and because they shall be hidden from my eyes. For look, I am creating new Shamayims and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered, nor come to heart. But be glad and celebrate forever in what I create. For look, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her people a gladness. And I shall rejoice in Jerusalem, and shall be glad in my people. And let the voice of weeping no more be heard in her. For the voice of crying, nor the voice of crying, no more is an infant. Listen, no more is an infant from there going to live but a few days. No more is an infant from there going to live but a few days, nor an old man who does not complete his days. For the youth dies 100 years old. This is the millennial reign. This is not eternity. Eternity is after the millennial reign. And so here we're talking about children and we're talking about youth, because there's still going to be childbirth in the millennial reign. There's still going to be a limit of days in the millennial reign, because the millennial reign is not eternity. And because there's going to be a limit of days, there must be childbirth. And if there is childbirth, that judgment, which was pronounced in the beginning, where man will rule over his Aisha, is still even in place here. And if we expect to enter into life, into everlasting life, we must submit to this judgment. But the criminal, being 100 years old, shall be lightly esteemed. I'm going to read that again. No more is an infant from there going to live but a few days, nor an old man who does not complete his days. For the youth dies 100 years old, but the criminal, being 100 years old, shall be lightly esteemed. And they shall build houses and inhabit them, and plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For the days of my people are going to be as the days of a tree, and my chosen ones outlive the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth children. Are you listening? They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth children for trouble. Nor bring forth children for trouble. There's still going to be the bringing forth of children, and that judgment is still going to be in place. And it behooves you to get in line with this order. To get in line with this order. This order was established in the garden. And this order where man will rule over woman, and woman will submit to him, and man will provide for her by the works of his hands. This order is going to remain intact until the earth and Shamayim passes away. And so this must be adhered to, this order. And so because this order is in place, woman does not teach man. You do not rule over man. You do not rule over man. And if there's some who are listening, who are still listening, who are operating in that feminine spirit, that effeminate or feminine Isabel spirit, and you want to talk about Deborah or Deborah didn't rule over anyone. Deborah was married. She was subject to her husband. She didn't rule over anyone. She didn't rule. She did not rule over anyone. She rightly ruled between the people. She rightly ruled in accordance with Torah, but she didn't teach men. She did not teach men, and she did not rule over them. No, she didn't. She had a husband. For her to rule over men would mean that she would subvert the commandment from the beginning, where your husband will rule over you. And Yahuwah is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should change his mind. She was married. She didn't rule over anyone. She had a husband. Yes, she did. Go read it. Yes, she did. She did not rule over anyone. No, she didn't. She didn't rule over anyone. Know your place. Know your place. And subject yourselves to proper order if you want eternal life. If you want eternal life. They shall not labor in vain, nor bring forth children for trouble. We're still talking about a woman's covering. For they are the seed of the Baruch of Yahuwah, and their offspring with them. And it shall be that before they call, I answer. And while they're still speaking, I hear. Wolf and lamb feed together. A lion eats straw as an ox, and dust and the snakes, and dust is the snake's food. They shall do no evil, nor destroy all my Kadosh mountain, said Yahuwah, said Yahuwah. I'm going to read here a couple more precepts, and then I'm going to shut this video down, and then we're going to start part 2 of this teaching. Then we're going to start part 2 of this teaching. Reading now from Baruch, the 70th chapter. Baruch, the 70th chapter. I'm going to read verses 1 through 10. Hear therefore the interpretation of the last black waters which are to come after the black. This is the word. Behold, the days come, and it shall be when the time of the age is ripened, and the harvest of his evil and good seeds has come, that all Elohim will bring upon the earth and its inhabitants, and upon its rulers, perturbation of the ruch and stupor of heart. And they shall hate one another, and provoke one another to fight. And the mean shall rule over the honorable, and those of low degree shall be extolled above the famous. And the many shall be delivered into the hands of the few, and those who were nothing shall rule over the strong. And the poor shall have abundance beyond the rich, and the impious shall exalt themselves above the heroic. And the cockama wise shall be silent, and the foolish shall speak. Neither shall the thought of men be then confirmed, nor the counsel of the mighty, nor shall the expectation of those who expect be confirmed. And when those things which were predicted have come to pass, then shall confusion fall upon all men, and some of them shall fall in battle, and some of them shall perish in anguish, and some of them shall be destroyed by their own. Then all Elohim will reveal those people whom he has prepared before, and they shall come and make war with the leaders that shall then be left. And it shall come to pass that whosoever gets safe out of the war shall die in an earthquake, and whosoever gets safe out of the earthquake shall be burned by the fire. And whosoever gets safe out of the fire shall be destroyed by famine. And it shall come to pass that whosoever of the victors and the vanquished gets safe out of and escapes all these things aforesaid will be delivered into the hands of my servant Mashiach, for all the earth shall devour its inhabitants. I read that to show also that Yahudah, that the people of Yasha'al are going to be fighting in these last days. Fighting leading up to the return of the HaMashiach. Leading up to the time of the HaMashiach. We're going to be fighting even when he cracks the sky. The people of Yahuwah are going to be fighting. Line by line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, establishing this truth. Baruch, Baruch 71, chapter 1 through 3. And the Kadosh land shall have compassion on its own, and it shall protect its inhabitants at that time. This is the vision which you have seen, and this is the interpretation. For I have come to tell you these things because your prayer has been heard with all you. To Baruch chapter 72, verse 1 through 6. Hear now also regarding the bright lightning, which is to come to the consummation after these black waters. This is the word. This is the word. After the signs have come, of which you were told before, when the nations become turbulent, and the time of my Mashiach is come, and the time of my Mashiach is come. He shall both summon all the nations, and some of them he shall spare, and some of them he shall slay. This is leading into the millennial reign. Again, a precept of this is Revelation 19 and 20. This is leading into the millennial reign and Zechariah 14. These things therefore shall come upon the nations which are to be spared by him. Every nation which knows not YAHUAH'S and has not trodden down the seed of Jacob. Again, a precept of this is Zechariah 14 and Zechariah 14. Shall indeed be spared. This because some of every nation shall be subjected to your people. But all those who have ruled over you or have known you shall be given up to the sword. To Baruch chapter 73, verse 1 through 6. And it shall come to pass, when he has brought low everything that is in the world, and has sat down in Shalom for the age on the throne of his kingdom. And this is the millennial reign. This is not eternity yet. This is the millennial reign. That gladness shall then be revealed, and rest shall appear. Rest shall appear because this is the Shabbat. The 7,000 year is a Shabbat day. We're going to rest with Yahuwah for a day, for a Shabbat, for 1,000 years. 6,000 years we've been given to work. On the 7,000th year will be a rest, a millennial rest. And then healing shall descend in dew, and disease shall withdraw, and anxiety and anguish and lamentation pass from amongst men, and gladness proceed through the whole earth. And no one shall again die untimely. And no one shall again die untimely. There's still going to be death. There's still going to be a limit of days. Nor shall any adversity suddenly befall. And judgments and rivalings and contentions and revenges and blood and passions and envy and hatred and whatsoever things are like these shall go into condemnation when they are removed. For it is these very things which have filled the world with evils, and on account of these the life of man has been greatly troubled. And wild beasts shall come from the forest and minister unto men, and asps and dragons, and shall come forth from their holes to submit themselves to a little child. To a little child. Now I missed a verse here, and I'm going to go to 2 Baruch 73. I'm going to go right there to 2 Baruch 73, and I'm going to read it because there was something here that was missed. That I want to read. So let me go to 2 Baruch 73. And I'm going to read that. What we looking like? Good. And I'm going to read that one. And then I'm going to shut this down for part 2. For part 2. Chapter 73. Let's look at this. Let's look at this. Okay, I missed verse 7. That's the verse I missed. Verse 7. Actually, I'm going to read verse 6 and 7 of chapter 73. And wild beasts shall come from the forest and minister unto men, and asps and dragons shall come forth from their holes to submit themselves to a little child. This is the millennial reign. And women shall no longer then have pain when they bear, nor shall they suffer torment when they yield the fruit of the womb. When they yield the fruit of the womb. Indeed, this judgment must be played out. Women, you must submit. Men, you must operate in your role. Women, you must operate in your role. Your role is to simply submit. It is to simply submit. You don't rule over men. You don't teach men. Your role is to submit. To submit. This is order. If you are married, you submit to your husband. If you're not married and you're calling yourself a teacher, you don't teach men, you teach women. That is disorder. That is disorder. And this order is going to be in place until the Arats and the Shamayim pass away. As we see here in the millennial reign, there's still going to be childbearing. There's still going to be childbearing. But we're still talking here in this teaching about a woman's covering. We're still talking about a woman's covering. Stand by, stay tuned for part 2. It's going to get better. It's going to get much, much better. And Yahuwah is going to open up your understanding. He's going to open up your understanding about what it means for a woman to be covered. What it means for a woman to be covered. And so until part 2, shalom, 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 mishpaka. Make sure you tune in to part 2. Shalom.